And on that day was the day of the ceremony for the new school year. When he arrived at school, he immediately slipped into the last row of positions. At the same time, Kiyozumi saw a first-grade girl who was pelted with paper from behind, and the girl's name was Kuramoto Hari. When the ceremony was over, Kiyo approached Hari with the intention of calming him down, but Hari responded with a loud and hysterical scream, so that makes the atmosphere stiff. During recess, a student named Ozaki came to Kiyozumi's class. He said that Kiyozumi is currently the talk of the first-grade students, because Kiyozumi has defended the girl who has always been the target of bullying from her classmates. They think Hari deserves to be bullied because of his strange behavior and his face, which is always covered with hair. When Kiyozumi visited Hari's class, he realized that the information was true. At the same time, he saw some students in the class bullying Hari, who couldn't do anything, just stared in fear and covered his face with his hair. When Kiyozumi entered Hari's class, the bullies stopped bothering Hari. Then Kiyozumi tidied up Hari's desk position again. During school hours, Kiyozumi was seen passing through the hallway of the school building. He saw a shoe outside the locker and took it, and it turned out to be Hari's shoes. And he put it back into the counter. And this turns out to be what Kiyozumi always does every day when he comes home from school, where he puts Hari's shoes back into the locker and changes name tag Hari with a new one. Scene then switches and shows Kiyozumi and his friends who are in a cafe. Kiyozumi is a student who has many friends. There they were talking about the treatment of the first graders, who often use the girls' toilet for their gathering place. When out of the cafe, out of curiosity, Kiyozumi went to the toilet. When I got to school, it turned out that the toilet door was closed, but out of curiosity, Kiyozumi wanted to stay in. And while inside, Kiyozumi heard a voice from the locked room at the end of the room. When he peeked over the top of the booth, he found Hari's clothes were already soaking wet and shivering with cold. The key to open the cubicle was actually right next to Hari, but he was reluctant to open it, for fear that if he came home wet, because his father would be angry. But after Kiyozumi persuaded Hari, finally gave the key to Kiyozumi and opened the door of the cubicle. Kiyozumi immediately gave him his jacket and sports clothes so that Hari wouldn't get cold. Then Kiyozumi took Hari to his aunt's house, who turned out to be a laundry service. Then Kiyozumi told his aunt to dry Hari's uniform there. Kiyozumi auntie feeling roasted after what happened to Hari. While waiting for Hari's uniform to dry, Kiyozumi invited Hari to go to his house and make hot instant soup for them to eat. At the same time, Kiyozumi finally found out who Hari really was. Hari turns out to be just an ordinary plain teenage girl who is very fussy when she talks. Hari was also very grateful to Kiyozumi, who always defended and helped him when he was bullied by his classmates. Hari also asked to be taught to be a brave person. Then Kiyozumi gave some tips, namely Hari no longer covered his face so he wouldn't be considered a strange person anymore. And Kiyozumi also said that Hari is cute and beautiful when his hair is neatly arranged. An hour has passed. He returned to take the dry uniform. Then Kiyozumi immediately took Hari back to his house on foot. Along the way, Hari told that his mother had left when he was little, and since then Hari lived with his father and grandmother. Hari thought that his mother left because he was kidnapped by UFO. After hearing everything, Kiyozumi promised to help Hari whenever he needed it. And ready to be a hero for Hari, Kiyozumi is indeed a very kind man, and someone who is obsessed with heroes and wants to be a hero. Kiyozumi didn't hesitate to put on a superhero pose. Seeing Kiyozumi's funny behavior, Hari couldn't help but laugh. Seeing Hari laughing, Kiyozumi started to like Hari. On the next day, Kiyozumi was seen going to school. and at the same time her aunt came to the house to leave a peanut cake to give to Harry. Kiyozumi then went to school and waited for Harry at the bridge. When Harry came, immediately gave the peanut cake to him. While at school in his classroom, Kiyozumi saw Harry being bullied again by male students. Harry's classmate named Ozaki was seen defending Harry, but they still bullied him. The boy even threw the peanut cake that Aunt Kiyozumi gave to Harry. Harry tried to fight back when he remembered his promise to Kiyozumi that he had to be brave. But unfortunately his courage was still not perfect. When he was about to be pelted with peanut cake, lucky Kiyozumi came and protected Harry. Kiyozumi's face was dirty and injured down to the UKS room. Kiyozumi advised Harry to report the bullying he received at school to his father. Hearing that, Harry refused because he was very afraid of his father. But Harry was determined to fight the bullies alone without his father knowing. Hearing this, Kiyozumi was curious about Harry's family life. Day by day their relationship seems to be getting closer. Every morning Kiyozumi always waits for Harry on the bridge to go to school together. One morning when Kiyozumi and Harry were walking to school, Ozaki came and gave a pack of candy to Harry. Received the candy, Kiyozumi saw bruises on Harry's hand which were probably the result of a blow, but seeing that Kiyozumi remained silent, he asked his friend to hold his hand firmly. Kiyozumi just wanted to know what it felt like to be bruised. His friend complied, and finally his hand hurt. Curiosity carried over to the house. He thought about who really hurt Harry to the point where he bruised Harry's hand. The next day, he asked Kiyozumi to teach mathematics. Harry felt he was not good at math and wanted to catch up. Kiyozumi agrees and invites Harry to come to his house. While at home they spent time together studying. Kiyozumi's mother was very happy to see her son with a girl, because this was the first time his mother had seen Kiyozumi bring a girlfriend to the house. In the afternoon, after they finished studying, Kiyozumi and his mother went to take Harry. But on the way, he saw his father in a car and then called his father to pull over. Look at Harry's father's face, a little annoyed, and Kiyozumi's mother apologized for making Harry come home a little late. Kiyozumi's mother also asked about Harry's grandmother at home. Harry's father, who heard it, looked a little tense. He accused Harry of telling about their family. Then Kiyozumi's mother also said about the difficulty of keeping parents at home. Last day's father replied that Harry's grandmother was healthy and fine and was in a nursing home, and after that they said goodbye to each other and went home. The next day at the usual place, Kiyozumi was seen waiting for Harry. But Harry didn't show up. Even Kiyozumi waited a long time. Feeling worried, Kiyozumi then rushed and looked for Harry in his class. When he got there, he was surprised to see Harry was already there, with the same pose as before by covering his face with hair. Harry also tried to avoid Kiyozumi and refused to talk to him. When the next day, Kiyozumi put the food in the shoe counter that Harry gave him from his aunt. But it turned out that Harry didn't want to accept it and instead returned the food to Kiyozumi's locker. Realizing that what he was making was seen by Kiyozumi, Harry ran outside and Kiyozumi then chased after him and informed that the food was from his aunt and for Harry. Without any response, Harry just kept walking home. Seeing this, Kiyozumi was very sad about Harry's change in himself. Harry looked strange again, like at the beginning of the school year, where he always covered his face with hair. In the afternoon, Kiyozumi went to Harry's house and called Harry, but no one answered. With feelings of disappointment and sadness, Kiyozumi then went home. At night, when Kiyozumi was studying in his room, he heard a woman's voice calling him, and it turned out to be Harry standing outside the house. Hari came just to let him know that Kiyozumi and his mother were in danger. He asked them to run away immediately because the UFO he had told about was ready to attack. Kiyozumi then realized that the UFO he meant was Hari's father. When turning on the porch light, Kiyozumi was very surprised when he saw the bruises on Hari's face. Hari then replied that his father was a psychopath, and his father asked for Kiyozumi's address, but Hari gave a fake address. Hari then went to Kiyozumi's house and wanted to make sure he was okay. He was worried that his father had found Kiyozumi's house. On the other hand, Kiyozumi was very proud of Hari for being strong, so they were determined to take down the UFO together. Hari also shouted that he wouldn't lose, and then the two fell limp in front of Kiyozumi. While crying, Hari then told that his grandmother was killed by his own father, then filled it in a suitcase and threw it into the lake. Kiyozumi was also sad and hugged Hari, then comforted him. At midnight on their bicycles they both went to the lake, where Kiyozumi was seen looking for the suitcase that Hari's father had sunk. After a long search, Kiyozumi finally found a suitcase, and it was empty. Hari assumed it was under his mother when she left them. Looks like Hari found an earring which turned out to be his mother's. Hari then screamed hysterically and cried. She realized that her mother was also killed just like her grandmother, who was then drowned in the lake. They then rushed and wanted to immediately report the incident to the police. It was seen that they also went to Hari's house, but when they were about to enter the house, Kiyozumi and Hari were hit with golf clubs from Hari's father, which made them both fall to the ground weak and helpless. The two of them were then dragged into the depths of the house and would be burned along with the house. Seeing Hari, Kiyozumi, who was weak and injured, could only cry and couldn't do anything. But Hari suddenly raised his hand up, indicating that he would defeat the UFO. After that, Hari threw the earrings that belonged to his mother to distract his father. Hari then got up with all his strength and then took a golf club and hit his father. Out of anger, Hari lost control and continued to beat his father to death. Hari then said goodbye to Kiyozumi. A few days later, Kiyozumi was seen being treated at the hospital, while Hari was recovering from his injuries. Choosing to change his identity, he just wanted to forget the tragedy he had experienced. The police are also seen following up on the case of Hari's mother and grandmother, and looking for the second body. Kiyozumi was also interrogated by the police, but he only answered that he wanted to help Hari from his father's shadow. When after leaving the hospital, Kiyozumi carried out his activities as usual. He always missed Hari's figure and always waited for Hari at his usual place. He waited for time to go to school, but it turns out that since then Hari has never been seen again. 2 years later now, Kiyozumi has become a student, and when he walked home from his campus he accidentally bumped into Hari, who looked different. Hari's hair was no longer unraveled, and now it's already covered. Tie tightly. They were then reunited and then married. A year later they will soon have a child. When the day of the delivery process, looks like Hari is struggling alone. Meanwhile, Kiyozumi is stuck in traffic in the middle of the road because of a car that fell and drifted into the river. Here Kiyozumi's conscience as a hero is called. Without thinking, Kiyozumi then jumped and helped those who were drowning. One by one they were saved. But it's a shame at the end, he himself was dragged and carried away by the swift river water and drowned. Hari finally managed to give birth to a baby boy safely, and then raised him alone without the figure of his beloved husband, Kiyozumi. But Hari always tells the kindness of his husband, Kiyozumi, to his son. So that motivates the child to always uphold justice. Even one night his son was seen imitating the typical pose of superhero Kiyozumi. Hari, who saw it, laughed because he remembered his past with Kiyozumi.